Welcome to True Echo, where real stories ripple beyond the moment. Today's tale begins with a quiet boy, a sketchpad of galaxies, and a cafeteria humiliation that would rock the walls of one of California's most elite schools. But when the truth about who this boy really was came to light, everything changed. Stay with us. Fairmont Academy wasn't a school, it was an institution. Perched high in the Palo Alto hills, it looked more like a European chateau than a place for children to learn. With its sandstone buildings and glass atriums, the campus was pristine, timeless, and intimidating. But it wasn't the architecture that cast the longest shadow, it was the legacy. Students didn't just arrive with lunchboxes and book bags. They came armed with last names that opened doors: Voss, Langford, Barrington. They inherited seats at the table, internships on Capitol Hill, and acceptance letters before applications were even mailed. Among these crowned heirs walked Theo Jordan, a boy with a different orbit. He was 12, rail-thin with large eyes magnified by thick lenses, and an introvert who carried the weight of dreams bigger than himself. He didn't care for designer backpacks or holographic phones. Instead, he had a fraying notebook filled with constellations he charted on his apartment's balcony. He wore his blazer every day, polished his shoes with dedication, and ate lunch out of a reusable cloth pouch. Most days, he was invisible. Until he wasn't. Theo didn't know he had enemies. Not until Beckham Voss, son of Police Chief Arthur Voss and the undisputed Prince of Fairmont, decided that Theo's existence disrupted the balance. Beckham thrived on hierarchy. He sat atop it, hands in pockets, smile like a wolf in silk. Theo's silence was a threat, his lack of need for approval a mirror the others didn't like. The teasing began as whispers. NASA boy. Star boy. Thelonious space monk. And Theo took it. Every taunt. Every snicker. He absorbed it like dark matter, not retaliating, only waiting. But there's a limit to even the quietest gravity. One Wednesday, the cruelty escalated. Theo had entered the school's art competition, a special entry for Space Visions. He stayed up late the night before, shading spirals of galaxies, marking constellations with names of his classmates, turning exclusion into cosmic harmony. That day, he sat alone in the cafeteria, detailing the last stars, unaware that a tray of spaghetti and ridicule were moments away from rewriting everything. Beckham Voss approached, flanked by his ever-silent goons. Without warning, he grabbed the drawing, mocked it in front of the crowd, and in a performance engineered for laughs and phones, dumped his lunch over Theo's head. Food rained. Laughter followed. Phones blinked to life. And then, the galaxy was torn in half. Theo didn't cry. He didn't scream. What shattered in him wasn't loud, it was seismic. As spaghetti slid down his collar and red sauce soaked into his blazer, he stood frozen, staring at the shredded remains of his galaxy. His breathing was shallow, his hands shaking. For a moment, he wasn't in Fairmont Academy. He was drifting somewhere far away, between stars that no longer existed. Then something primal surged. He lunged, not to hurt, but to reclaim. He grabbed Beckham's collar with both fists and snarled, "You had no right." The cafeteria gasped. Not because of violence, but because the quiet kid finally spoke. Before the moment could evolve, Beckham's guards reacted. They wrenched Theo's arms behind his back and held him fast. Beckham laughed, brushing imaginary dust off his shoulders. "Easy there, Star Trek. My dad puts kids like you in cuffs for less." Then he bent down, picked up the dripping, ruined sketchpad, and ripped it again, this time slowly. Deliberately. Miss Carrington, the teacher on duty, finally approached. Her gaze swept over the mess and landed on Theo, restrained and sauce-covered. "Mr. Jordan," she sighed as if she were the one inconvenienced, "clean this up. And please, try not to be so dramatic." The boys laughed. Phones slipped back into pockets. The show was over. Theo stood, fists clenched, his entire body humming with disbelief. No one helped. No one even flinched. Except the janitor, who gave him a look, sad, apologetic, but said nothing as he handed over a mop. The silence afterward was suffocating. Theo knelt and began picking up what remained of his galaxy with trembling fingers. Across the room, unnoticed, a phone continued to record. A student named Ryder Kim had streamed the entire event live to his modest following. Within minutes, the footage was clipped, shared, and reshared. Comments poured in. Beckham went too far. Why didn't the teacher do anything? Someone tag at Fairmont Confessions. The internet never sleeps. And neither did Clara Monroe, Dominic Jordan's chief of staff. She received the video that night while reviewing logistics for an upcoming summit. Her nephew had tagged her in the clip with the caption, "Space Boy gets wrecked." She clicked it, curious, then froze. Her nephew had no idea who Theo Jordan was. But Clara did. She forwarded the clip to Dominic without a word. At that moment, Dominic Jordan, miles above the Pacific in his private jet returning from Singapore, opened the message. He watched every second of the video in silence. He saw the spaghetti. The laughter. The sketchpad torn. His son restrained. He didn't speak. He didn't rage. He simply said 4 words to his pilot, "Turn this plane around." By dawn, Dominic Jordan's Gulfstream touched down quietly on a private strip outside Palo Alto. No press. No fanfare. Just a father stepping out into the morning light with the calm certainty of a man who dismantled billion-dollar companies for sport. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a plain gray shirt, dark jeans, and eyes that looked like steel forged in fire. The black helicopter that followed wasn't for intimidation. It was for time. Every second wasted was a second his son remained humiliated without justice. By 8 a.m., Dominic walked through Fairmont Academy's wrought iron gates for the first time since Theo enrolled. Students and staff stared. Some whispered. But most simply moved aside, as if his presence shifted gravity. The front desk assistant nearly knocked over her coffee. "Mr. Jordan." "We weren't. We're going to the principal's office," Dominic interrupted. His voice was even, but it carried like thunder wrapped in velvet. Principal Tucker Hale prided himself on managing crisis with polished optics. But when Dominic Jordan stepped into his office, the illusion shattered. Dominic placed his phone on the desk, tapped the screen, and let the video play. Tucker's rehearsed smile faltered with every second. When the video ended, Dominic didn't yell. He didn't make threats. He simply said, "I want every faculty member and student who was in that cafeteria assembled on the athletic field in 30 minutes. Principal Hale blinked. "Mr. Jordan, I understand you're upset, but we have protocols. Assemblies require at least. You have 24 minutes. Dominic turned and left, the air in the office instantly thinner. The headmaster's authority, built on years of polite fundraising and soft power, cracked in a single moment. Orders were given. Text sent. Classrooms emptied. As students filed toward the field, whispers surged like wildfire. Something big was happening. No one knew what, but they all felt it. Theo sat in the library, numb. He hadn't told his father what happened. He didn't want to. He didn't want to seem weak, to distract him from global conferences and high-stakes investments. He didn't know the video had gone viral. All he knew was shame. And loneliness. Then he saw it. Through the tall windows, sitting on the athletic field like a sleeping giant, was the black helicopter. His father's. Theo's chest tightened. Not with fear, but hope. Dominic was here. The entire student body, faculty, and staff stood assembled on the manicured turf of the athletic field. A thin wind picked up, brushing against blazers and silk blouses. The bleachers were filled, phones ready in pockets, speculation thick in the air. Most thought it was a safety drill. Some feared a lawsuit. A few just hoped it would delay a math test. Then Dominic Jordan stepped forward. He didn't need a microphone. His voice carried. His presence demanded it. This morning, he began, standing alone in the center of the field, I received a video. Not of a security threat. Not of a prank. But of the truth. An ugly, unfiltered truth about what this institution has become. The murmurs hushed. Some students glanced at Beckham Voss, seated stiffly 3 rows in. His usual smirk was absent. The video showed a boy. Alone. Humiliated. Covered in food. His art destroyed. Not because he broke a rule, but because he dared to be different. Dominic held up a transparent case. Inside was Theo's sketchpad, its once beautiful galaxy now stained red, torn, warped by cruelty. That boy, Dominic said, eyes sweeping the crowd, is my son. A wave moved through the students like a cold gust. Theo. That kid. The space nerd. People started whispering. Eyes darted toward him at the edge of the field. Theo stood still, unsure whether to shrink or stand tall. Dominic turned to the staff. And you, adults, watched it happen. Some of you laughed. Some of you ignored it. One of you ordered my son to clean the mess as if he made it. Miss Carrington looked away. Other teachers lowered their eyes, silence swallowing their excuses. I've given this school over $60 million. Not for naming rights. Not for buildings. But because I believed Fairmont could be something better. A place of integrity. Of curiosity. A place where a boy like Theo could belong, not because of my wealth, but because of his brilliance. He paused, letting it sink in. You proved me wrong. Then he signaled. A monitor was wheeled out. The video played in full, uncut, unedited. Gasps echoed. Some students covered their mouths. Others looked away. Beckham Voss sat frozen, pale. When the video ended, Dominic delivered the blow. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing all funding, grants, scholarships, and support from Fairmont Academy. Every dollar. Gone. Principal Hale's mouth fell open. He stepped forward, visibly sweating. Mr. Jordan, please, we can discuss. There's nothing to discuss, Dominic said, never looking at him. My son is leaving this school. He deserves better. And I will build it. He turned to Theo and nodded once, a gesture that carried pride, apology, and a father's fierce love. The silence that followed Dominic Jordan's final words was thick enough to feel. No one dared to clap. No one dared to speak. The weight of what had just unfolded pinned every person in place. And then, like a tremor before an earthquake, the ripple began, online. By the end of the school day, the video had already gained thousands of views. Comments exploded. Clips circulated. The footage writer Kim had posted was reshared by student confession pages, local bloggers, and soon, national outlets. That evening, Theo's story led the 6 o'clock news. Not as a tragedy, but as a reckoning. Billionaire father calls out elite school over cafeteria bullying. Fairmont Academy under fire for toxic culture. Starboy speaks through silence, Dominic Jordan's son sparks national debate. The clip of Dominic holding up the ruined galaxy sketch became a symbol. Commentators on cable news debated institutional bias. Parents around the country posted their own stories. Teachers in small towns re-evaluated their behavior. It wasn't just a story, it was a mirror. Fairmont's administration tried to contain the fallout. But it was too late. By Friday morning, Principal Hale had submitted his resignation. Miss Carrington was quietly terminated. Beckham Voss was suspended indefinitely. Chief Arthur Voss, facing massive public backlash, released a strained statement, "We take bullying seriously, but the damage was done. Dominic didn't gloat. He didn't appear on interviews. He simply returned to work, quietly diverting funds from Fairmont to something new, something urgent. Within weeks, whispers began about a school being built on the other side of Palo Alto. Not another prep academy for the elite. But something different. A space. A vision. A promise. Theo, meanwhile, remained quiet, but not broken. He withdrew from Fairmont with his head held high. And when reporters tried to find him, he refused interviews. He wasn't interested in going viral. He was interested in building. And 3 months later, beneath a sky stretched wide like an open canvas, construction broke ground on what would be called the Jordan Institute for Visionary Youth. But everyone just called it Theo's school. Theo's school wasn't designed with prestige in mind. It was built for purpose. Solar panels lined the rooftops. Classrooms had no corners, just open space and clear walls. Hallways curved instead of boxed. Every building was named after a concept, not a person. Wonder. Grit. Imagination. And at the center stood a dome-shaped observatory, its entrance marked with a single word, horizon. Tuition was free for half the students. The rest paid what they could. Uniforms were optional, but kindness wasn't. Students were admitted not based on last names or bank accounts, but on vision. Curiosity. Passion. It was a radical idea in a world that often confused wealth with worth. And Theo? He wasn't the school's mascot. He was its heartbeat. He didn't walk through the halls like a celebrity. He walked like someone who had earned stillness. Confidence didn't drape over him, it glowed quietly, like starlight. He led by presence, not volume. On opening day, hundreds gathered. Parents holding coffee and nervous hands. Students adjusting backpacks. Teachers with rolled-up sleeves and eyes full of belief. Theo stepped to the podium, wearing a navy sweater and calm shoulders. He looked over the crowd and spoke into the mic with the steadiness of someone who'd already weathered a storm. "I used to think the sky was the only place I could belong," he said, his voice clear and strong. "Because it didn't judge me. It didn't care how much my lunch cost. Or if my shoes had logos." He looked toward the observatory. "The stars are still my friends. But now I have more. This place, this school, it's our piece of the sky. For the minds that ask, why, instead of, how much. For the ones who draw galaxies, not attention." The crowd didn't erupt. They stood still. Some cried. The applause, when it came, was slow and sincere. Like light reaching Earth from a distant star. Dominic stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, eyes misted. He didn't need to say a word. His son had already said everything. Years later, Theo never sought the spotlight. He never gave TED Talks. He never wrote a memoir. But his influence stretched far beyond the campus that bore his story. He spent his days teaching astronomy to kids who'd never seen a telescope before. He mentored students who'd been told they were too quiet or too strange to lead. He painted galaxies in chalk with third graders on courtyard pavement, and sat under the dome on Friday nights helping teens point their scopes at Mars. He was never just the boy who was bullied. He was the boy who rebuilt gravity. Fairmont Academy, in contrast, became a footnote. After the exodus of funding, students, and credibility, it merged with another private institution. The sandstone building still stood, but the prestige had faded. Beckham Voss transferred to a school out of state. His name never again appeared in the headlines. But Theo's name became a quiet anthem. In one hallway of the Jordan Institute, encased in glass, hangs what's left of the drawing that started it all. The ruined galaxy. Torn, stained, but preserved. Below it is a small plaque with no gold, no sponsors, just one line in soft serif font. Beauty destroyed can still become the foundation of something greater. And in the observatory, when nights are clear and the students gather, they don't just study Saturn's rings or count lunar craters. They remember why they're there. They remember the moment the sky cracked open in a cafeteria. They remember the boy who chose to rise instead of fold. And sometimes, late at night, Theo stands alone beneath the dome, looking up. He doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need applause. He has something far rarer. He has created a world where no one like him ever has to kneel in shame again. And somewhere, past the blur of city lights, the galaxy he once imagined still spins, unfinished, untamed, and entirely his. When cruelty tried to break a boy's voice, he answered not with rage, but with purpose. And in doing so, he shattered an institution and built a future. As Theo Jordan showed us, silence can be a form of strength, until it becomes a storm. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that power isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's quiet, steady, and revolutionary.